Good afternoon and welcome to the May 2nd, 2024 regular meeting of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. I believe what I'd like to do, we were having a guest come do the invocation today. I do not see him here, but I'd like to ask everyone, if you would, to please stand and join us for a moment of silence. And I'd like to ask you particularly to reflect on the slain law enforcement officers in Charlotte earlier this week. That was quite a tragedy. And afterwards, Commissioner Linville will ask you to join him in the pledge. As we begin. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting, you may do so by calling 336-422-1200. That number is 336-422-1200, and you will be placed on hold until the public session begins. Members of the audience who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting, you must fill out a speaker card and return it to the clerk, and actually that could be done now, and the cards are right outside the entry door. First item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider the expenditure of county general funds for an economic development project and authorizing an agreement with John Deere Kernersville, LLC. We have Asani Mitchell, our Community and Economic Development Program Manager, is going to give us an overview of the request, and we are ready when you are.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pleasure to be before you all again today. This item is a proposed economic development incentive to assist in the recruitment of a company here in Forsyth County. As you all know, we have briefed this item over the last 2 weeks under code name Project Copper. And so today we'll detail the company name as well as details around the county's incentive. So Project Copper, the company name is John Deere Kernersville, LLC. Currently, this company, John Deere Kernersville LLC, they manufacture construction machinery. The Forsyth County location, the company intends to manufacture excavators. And the company, John Deere Kernersville, they are considering launching a facility near existing manufacturing sites, either here in the United States or also in Mexico. Details around the county project, this facility will be located in Kernersville, North Carolina. And this location is favorable to the company because it would allow the company to leverage existing manufacturing overhead in Kernersville. And as I stated, the company is considering other locations in Mexico. Details around the capital investment, John Deere Kernersville is proposing to invest a capital investment of $70 million. And that investment is divided into real property as well as machinery and equipment. And so that would be a $47 million investment in real property and a $23 million investment in machinery and equipment. This $70 million investment would generate at least 151 full-time jobs in our county at the facility. And those jobs have an average salary of $64,362 per year. And John Deere Kernersville, they look to deploy those jobs between 2026 and 2030. We'll take a look at the county's incentive package. This would be a 5-year proposed incentive. And based upon the county's capital investment of $70 million, the county's incentive over 5 years would not exceed $944,006. And that capital investment would generate a little north of $3.8 million in taxes over 10 years. And the county, we would retain 76% of those taxes. And that's estimated to be a net of just north of $2.9 million in taxes over 10 years. The company is committed to our current workforce development efforts here in the county. and they look to leverage existing partnerships with Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, as well as the local community college. John Deere, they did participate in our recent World of Work, and they are eager to expand and build on existing partnerships and future partnerships here in the county. That's our presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have a representative from Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. here, as well as a representative from John Deere Kernersville, if you have any questions.
Since I live in Kernersville, where in Kernersville will it be located?
This would be located in conjunction to the existing John Deere facility in Kernersville.
Thank you.
Any
other
questions for Hassani? We're happy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's good. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Good afternoon. Ellis Kiefer with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., 525 Vine Street. Good afternoon, Chairman Martin, Vice Chair Wisenhunt, and members of the board. Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. is excited to present Project Copper today for incentive consideration. We're grateful for John Deere Kernersville's continued partnership and commitment to Forsyth County. As a major employer in our community, the company's growth is a testament to both the dedication and innovation of the John Deere Kernersville team, but also the strength of Forsyth County's manufacturing sector. The 151 jobs and $70 million of investment created by this project will have a meaningful impact on the individuals and families in our community, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the petition? All righty. Declare the public hearing closed and would be happy to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion by Vice Chair Wisenhunt. Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. We are very happy to have this expansion and to the John Deere complex. It's a compound. All the different items are going out there. So we're really glad to hear. Representatives of John Deere, would you guys stand up for those that are here? And we'll say, oh, hello. Thank you. Happy for this another day. We've had several. So good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presence here. All righty. The next item of the agenda is an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend chapters 4 and 5 of the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, to increase the maximum number of units allowed per building in the RM5 residential multifamily district, increase the maximum building height allowed in RM8, RM12, and RM18, and in the residential multifamily districts, and to revise the threshold for requiring buffer yard standards. A public hearing was held and actually closed on March 21st. We had a couple of questions, and particularly Chris Murphy, our Planning and Development Services Director, is going to give a brief overview and also identify the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and Board. Yes, you did a great job of recapping what the changes are, so I won't go over that slide, but it does change the heights, the number of attached units, and buffer yard triggers for certain size projects. This amendment is intended to reduce rezoning requests to higher density multifamily districts by allowing more design flexibility in lower density multifamily districts. Purpose is to enable multifamily developments to meet the maximum zoning density while accommodating site constraints such as creeks, floodplains, steeper slopes, et cetera, hopefully having them kind of right-size their project by their request. Again, the amendment does increase the maximum number of attached units per building from 4 units to 6 in the RM5 district. It does increase the height in the RM8, RM12, and RM18 districts. The amendment does stipulate that new structures in those districts, when they exceed 40 feet in height, must be set back a minimum of 50 feet from adjacent properties, zoned for single-family residential development, again, to try to take away that canyon effect, make sure there's ample room there, but again, allow folks to better utilize the area where they are constructing by being able to get some additional height. Parking, however, may be located within that 50-foot setback consistent with what is allowed today, except for any required buffer. The amendment does propose to revise the buffer yard requirement from applying to multifamily and townhome developments of 5 units or more to developments of greater than 1 acre in size. At your public hearing, there was a concern related to that provision. Again, there's some limited applicability within the Forsyth County zoning jurisdiction. So the choice is to adopt it as was originally presented, or there is a revised version, I believe, at your place that would leave it as is. And what that would do is essentially under the initial proposal that came before you, the buffer yard would be triggered on a project greater than 1 acre in size. The existing provisions, if you decide not to adopt what was originally proposed, the existing provisions would keep it as is, and essentially would say the buffer yard is triggered anytime you have a multifamily development greater than 5 units. So that is essentially the choice. From our perspective, this is already in a county-only provision of the ordinance. The residential building multifamily use conditions in the ordinance, it's a city-only section and a county-only section. Generally, we like to keep the ordinance the same for simplicity's sake, but since it's already in separate sections, this will not cause us any issues. And again, I think there's probably very limited applicability to these standards in the county anyway. So with that, I will leave you with the planning board did hold their public hearing back in December. There were no speakers in opposition. The planning board did vote unanimously to recommend approval. The city council did adopt this in February, and of course, we've briefed this several times and held the public hearing. Again, I think that there weren't any concerns with the number of attached units, with the increase in height. It's centered on this buffer yard trigger. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Chris, I believe you may have misspoken. I think the buffer yard is triggered at more than 4 units.
5 or more. Yes, you're correct. So greater than 4 units, 5 or more.
Any other questions for Chris? Are we ready for a motion?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of the most recently revised version of this, and we'll be happy to explain my thinking if I have a second for the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Bessie. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you. I understand the thrust of the overall set of proposed changes here. When I was reviewing them, it seemed to me that there was one that was potentially problematic, and that was the one that is not changed by the revision. The potential problem there is that it would incentivize the development of those 1 acre small parcels in existing, mostly in existing neighborhoods, existing developments, of 1 acre or less without the buffer yard requirement. And I think that would have the unintended side consequence of having those smaller parcels developed to the greater density without any provision for open space within the development. I think that's bad public policy in that it does not take into account the adverse health and livability impacts of having the more intense development without some open space for the folks that live there. So that's why I'm recommending leaving that one out, and I'd be happy to, if consistency were an issue, I'd be happy to go back to my former colleagues on the council and say, I think you missed one. You might want to go back and take another look at it.
Well, I probably think that what Chris said about we already have 2, I think we can just have 2.
We have to.
And be different in that part. So I do agree, if you're a developer, it's a little confusing, but everyone can read those, and it's right next to it, so follows it. So any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing May 2024 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. And by the way, we're going to have, I believe Commissioner McDaniel was going to read the resolution, and Annie Vasquez, our public health educator, is here to receive the resolution, and I'd like to invite her to come forward.
There's lots of them.
And a few others. Please come forward. We're glad to have you here today from our health department.
Again, wow. Welcome, and thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to read the resolution recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Whereas nearly 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 5 adolescents in the United States live with a mental illness. Whereas mental health impacts a person's emotional, social, environmental, financial, and overall well-being, with significant disparities amongst racially and ethics diverse communities. Whereas suicide is now the second leading cause of death to 15 to 24-year-olds, with teenagers experiencing a 17.3% increase in the use of anxiety medications since 2010. Whereas 1/3 of the United States population lives in a county designated as a mental health professional shortage area. Whereas an estimated 44% of residents detained in jails and suffering from a mental illness, often with co-occurring substance abuse disorders. Whereas Forsyth County and all counties serve as a safety net for residents in needs, first responders, and operators with crisis lines, public health, hospitals, and detention centers. And whereas Forsyth County has developed and continues to grow its behavioral health services, offering services and support to all residents. Now, Chairman and Board of Commissioners, therefore be it resolved that the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby declares May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Forsyth County to highlight the critical role in the county in providing crucial behavioral health services and resources to its residents, adopted the second day of May 2024. Thank you.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you for being here. And more importantly, thank you for the important work that you do every day.
Blessings to you all.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing May 2024 as Historic Preservation Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Vice Chair Wisenhunt will read the resolution. I'd like to invite Michelle McCullough and Shanita Johnson, who are here, to accept the resolution, and please come forward. Appreciate all of you being here.
Resolution recognizing May 2024 as Historic Preservation Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Whereas Forsyth County joins cities and counties across the United States in a nationwide celebration of Historic Preservation Month. Whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for economic development, tourism promotion, revitalization neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. Whereas Historic Preservation Month is sponsored by the Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission. Whereas the Historic Resources Commission mission is to protect and enrich the county's culture, historical architectural heritage through the identification, designation, and preservation of historic resources. Whereas the Historic Resources Commission strives to promote the use and conservation of historic properties for the education, pleasure, and enhancement for the residents of Forsyth County. Whereas the Historic Resources Commission strives to educate the public about the history of Forsyth County's built environment, both extant and gone, and to amplify the voices and stories of persons and places traditionally excluded from the historic preservation narrative. And whereas the Commission encourages members of the community to participate in creative and fun events related to historic preservation as a way to celebrate Preservation Month 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby recognizes the month of May 2024 as Historic Preservation Month in Forsyth County and encourages the people of Forsyth County to join their fellow citizens across the United States in celebrating and participating in this special observation.
I'll second that motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank all of you for reminding us every year about our history and what we need to do to preserve it.
I'll get to say a couple of things.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you for this resolution. Our commission is very important, and we thank you for the recognition of it, because we do need to understand that we are intertwined. And our history is all of our history in Winston-Salem and in Forsyth County. Our commission has celebrated its 75th anniversary, and we did so last fall, November 4th. Our commission is also the first historic preservation commission in the state of North Carolina. And when we had our 75th anniversary, we had it at our very first historic district, which is Old Salem. So, and everyone came out and helped us to celebrate that wonderful day. It was a wonderful November. The weather was great. So we really like the idea that we have various programs that are ongoing for Forsyth County, and we would like all to participate as possible. Thank you again for this resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me. Next item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing May 5th through 11th, 2024 as Professional Clerks Week in Forsyth County, North Carolina. And by the way, we are very blessed to have two wonderful folks that serve in those capacities. First, our clerk is Ashley Matthews, and her deputy and her support, who is in here. Thank you, Rosalind Covington. That's you could stand up, Rosalind. We could. Thank you. Thank both of you. And it is my pleasure to read the resolution. It's a resolution recognizing May 5, 2024 through May 11, 2024 as Professional Clerks Week. Whereas the Office of the Clerk of the Board of Commissioners, which includes the clerk and deputy clerk, is a time-honored and vital part of local government and is among the oldest among public servants. Whereas clerks provide the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and the agencies of government at all levels. Whereas clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal services to all. Whereas clerks serve as the information center on functions of local government and community. Whereas clerks continually strive to improve their services through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional associations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Clerk to the Board of Commissioners. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby recognizes the week of May 5 through May 11th, 2024 as Professional Clerks Week, and further extends its appreciation to Forsyth County Clerk, to the Board of Commissioners Ashley Matthews and Deputy Clerk Rosalind Covington for the vital services they perform in their exemplary dedication to the Board of Commissioners and the citizens of Forsyth County. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. On this second day of May 2024. Thanks to both of you. I couldn't help but think about all the serving as the information center. I couldn't help but think about that. Certainly the case. But I was a little curious about the provincial meetings. I didn't know there'd been any provinces meeting with clerks. But other than that, the resolution right on target. That's great. Thank you. All righty. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the meeting of April 18th.
Move approval.
Got a motion by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I need to have people raise their hands. I'll do that. Madam Clerk, do we have any calls or cards for the public session?
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 public speaker cards.
Good.
The first speaker is Matthew Mayers. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Matthew Mayers. I live at 2844 Wesleyan Lane here in Winston-Salem. Is there a timer? Or should I put one on for myself?
I have one.
Okay, you do. I'll put one on anyway so I know when I'm
If you're
running.
worried, then I need to not run it. I'm just need to get this thing cranked up. Here
Well,
we
you
go.
just never know. I'll put one on too. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And thank all of you commissioners and staff for that matter. I was recently thinking about the 2019 resolution that you all passed that set goals for reducing carbon emissions here in the county, and thought that was a really bold thing to do, especially back in 2019 before there was a bunch of funding available to help you do those things. So that's, I applaud you for that. And also for what looks like you're going to give final approval to a solar array out at Tanglewood, I think later today, which is a terrific move. I recently came across a quote by Kurt Vonnegut that says something along the lines of, "We'll go down in history as the first society that wouldn't save itself because it wasn't cost effective." And I admit I chuckled when I saw that, but it was kind of a bitter laughter, and I don't like that. I prefer a different quote that came out in a book last year by an author named Akshat Rathi. He wrote a book called Climate Capitalism. And in it he says, it is now cheaper to save the world than to destroy it. And I didn't laugh at that one, but my kind of like like you, my eyebrows went up, and I thought that's an interesting idea. It's an interesting thought. A lot of water's gone under the bridge since Kurt Vonnegut said his thing. We have a lot of technological advancements, but we also have new funding mechanisms to get things done. So I was kind of expecting when the Inflation Reduction Act passed in Washington back in 2022 to start seeing the floodgates open, if you'll permit me a small criticism, I've been a little disappointed to see that it hasn't been happening as fast as I would have hoped. There are pretty big chunks of money out there to help. And I'm just here, I guess, to encourage you all in your yearly deliberations, or I guess really weekly deliberations. Each year you come around to figuring out what to do with the PAYGO money, which I think you're about to vote on for the 23 year. There are some things that you could be doing that easily pay for themselves. Whether you care about the climate or the environment or anything else, there's money out there on the table. I'm not going to call it free money because we all know where that money comes from. It comes from our taxes, so reach for it. It's on the table. I would love to see a floor of about $2 million a year out of the PAYGO to do things like buy electric vehicles, for which there's a $7,500 credit. And since you're a fleet, not an individual, there are no restrictions on what kind you can buy. They also pay for themselves really quickly in terms of not spending on fuel and very limited maintenance costs. Similarly, solar panels, I'm out of time, sorry. Anyway, there's a 30% credit for solar panels. Thank you to Mr. Martin, Dr. Martin, for meeting with me a couple of weeks ago, and Mr. Barnett, and I'll step down, but I'll probably be back. It's good to see you all.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Marcy West. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Commissioners, Chairman Martin. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Marcy West. I live at 331 Carolina Circle, Winston-Salem. I'm also a candidate for Forsyth County Commission in District B. I wanted to thank you today for the service that you put forward. I am very, very aware of how challenging it is to balance and work on a budget and balance the needs of the priority along with those growing needs. And then there's a scarcity of resources. It's challenging to do that. I gained that experience in over 10 years of local government, serving on a town select committee, which is similar to a board of commissioners, and 9 years on a finance committee. So I'm very aware of how that process works. I'm here today, therefore, to urge you to move the commissioners' meetings so that when there is a need for public comment, and also as you are discussing the budget and having your workshops, that the community is able to participate. So moving those meetings to 6 o'clock would allow people to participate in the community. Currently, those meetings are at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And most people work. They do not have the flexibility to be here in person or to call in. It's just not something that's possible for most people. And it's really a little disappointing that the commission has not responded. I know that there have been letters that have requested this, as well as people in person at the last meeting requesting this move. It's very important to get people involved. I believe the government exists to serve the people and not to serve the people who are on the board. So it's important to crucially to consider what those community inputs are. What does the community care about? What are their priorities? And the way to get that is really to allow people to participate in these meetings and to have an opportunity to express their opinions. Additionally, meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is not a best practice for a local government. I did my own survey on the largest communities in Winston-Salem. The largest 6 counties all have meetings in the evening, other than Forsyth County. And I know in the last meeting, a woman did a lot more research than I did. 20 communities in Forsyth County, and Forsyth is the only one that has afternoon meetings and no evening opportunities. I think it's really important that you make that available to the public. Last year, there was an accommodation made, and there was a public comment session that happened. It started at 4 in the afternoon, which allowed a lot of teachers to get here. That meeting filled this room and filled an entire overflow room. So we know that there's an appetite for that type of participation. And so I just urge you to please make that opportunity available to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, Mr. County Manager, we are ready to continue with the remainder of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. So we have our kind of the action time on the agenda. It's a little bit unusual because last week we kind of ran short, and so we actually did not do kind of a formal review on all the items. They have been in front of you for the entire 2-week session. And I know we've tried to answer any questions that may have come up. But anyway, so we're going to spend a little more time today kind of stepping back through that to make sure that you're okay and ready to vote. And if there's something that you need more information on, we can table it. But it is a little bit unusual. Anyway, agenda item 8 was reviewed in full. It's a resolution authorizing appropriation of behavioral health funds and execution of associated agreements in fiscal year 2025. This really deals with the maintenance of effort allocation of $2,026,677 that's really available and sort of is that base maintenance of effort amount. Of that, there are, let me make sure I get these numbers right. The appropriation recommendation is there for $1,861,134,000 of those dollars to outside communities, kind of entities, and then $138,997 of the fund balance, and then the $2,165,543,000 really is in the continuation budget, really for departmental activities that are funded through the maintenance of effort funds, and then of that, there's $327,241 of expended fund balance and that really is the behavioral health, the women's behavioral health project at the Law Enforcement Detention Center. So that is the results of those recommendations that really bubble up through the Health and Human Services Board for your consideration.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve by Vice Chair Wizenhut.
And Chairman, I will second. I also just wanted to tell Denise and the board, thank you so very much. I see a lot of the entities are new, which gives me hope. So for our community in terms of behavioral health, so I wanted to formally say thank you.
Second by Commissioner Wizenhut and Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? I'd like to echo Commissioner McDaniel's comments to Denise and others. As we've looked at those, we went over in great detail. There are a lot of them, and I am glad also. I'm actually also glad to see new interest in new proposals and a good evaluation process as we look forward to continuing those. We'll, this body will be fortunate, hopefully, for the next 18 to 20 years to actually be working on that, and there's a lot of work out there to be done. So anyway, thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand, please. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, agenda item 9 is a resolution to direct the expenditures of opioid settlement funds. You've got an amendment to the North Carolina Opioid Settlement Special Revenue Fund to appropriate those funds. Obviously, those are dollars that have been generated up through the opioid settlement. The expenditure recommendations for FY25 include $3,323,965, and if I did my math right, I think there's 24 programs that get funded. So a lot of money to be put at work in this community to battle the opioid epidemic.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut.
I'll second with the same sentiments. Thank you.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. I'll agree. Again, a lot of work goes into reviewing those, and so it's hard to save money, but it's also harder sometimes to spend it to make sure you're investing it wisely. So thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. And any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Good deal. Agenda item 10, I'm going to ask Kyle Wolf to come on up. He can briefly review the details of the board action. They all relate to this document that you have in front of you, which you've had for, I think we got it out before the first briefing, but it is the recommendations for PAYGO for FY23. This is coming to you a little later than it normally would. This normally would have been coming to you in November. And I was reminded, we actually made it through all these projects. I was talking to somebody, so I was not there for the very end of it, but we did make it through there, and there's more detail on the in the backup. But do you want to? Is there any questions about any of those projects?
The only question that I would have, Dudley, Chairman, if I may, is relative to the inflation costs, if there is a consensus of that in this.
So in this item, what we are doing is, let's see, there was a total of, what was the leftover money?
I can probably do it. So on the second page, there was inflation contingency that was wrapped into that.
I see.
So that raised the total to $28,041,797.
Okay.
We are only making recommendations for funding of $23,053,900. That will give us some flexibility as we go into the budget. And it would go into some of if we run into inflation on some of the other ones. You are fairly quickly going to see a few of them go ahead and bubble up into agenda items, but all of these would come back to you for action at some point in time. So even if you approve them today, I say that there might be a few that are under $1 threshold, but most of them are going to come back to you anyway. But and there's, as we're working between finance and budget, we recognize that the way we've handled PAYGO in our agenda items, we create new PAYGO capital project ordinances, and in some cases, they're really not projects yet. They are really reserve funds for things that are going to take longer. And so we're actually in the process right now trying to have a little better architecture on that so that it's not as confusing. And we'll bring that back to you, but for the purposes of where we are now, we just brought them to you kind of the way we have with a special a capital project ordinance for the 2023 PAYGO. But we're going to clean it up.
All right, thank you.
Right, and so, mechanically, what you'll be asked to approve today is an amendment to the FY24 budget ordinance to appropriate the fund balance that was available as a result of the year-end results of FY23. And once we appropriate that revenue, we'll adopt the 23 PAYGO CPO, which would include projects for radio consoles, focus replacement of DSS, or DSS focus replacement, some Monarch building improvements, library upfits, campground expansion, festival lights. Well, a lot of this, these were listed in the budget ordinance of 24 as well. The Tanglewood Yadkin River Overlook, LADC security, government center security upgrades, animal shelter, and parking decks. And then it will also be amending the 2016 Parks Capital Project Ordinance, which is really where bond referendum money has been appropriated from the 2016 referendum. But there were two projects that were included in the bond referendum that would get some additional funding. It's $3.1 million for the Ag Center, and then $500,000 for Horizons Park. It would amend the 2018 Airport CPO, and so it would give additional funding to the car wash project that you've heard about in the past, some North Liberty Street improvements, the Brushy Fork project, Brushy Fork Creek project, and lower terminal parking. And then there's an amendment to the 2020 PAYGO CPO. So there was a project that was had already received some funding there for public health facility renovation. This would give an additional $4.6 million to that project. And so that's why the money was going there, is because that project was there. The 22 PAYGO CPO would get additional funding of $164 for the photovoltaic solar project that was already approved by the board. And then the 22 Blues Lake CPO would be amended to receive an additional $2.5 million for, I believe, phase 2 of the Blues Lake project. And so it is a lot of moving parts, and we are looking to simplify it coming forward, but that's what this item is doing.
Any questions for Kyle? Are we ready for action? We have a motion?
Move approval.
Motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut, second by Commissioner Bessie. Discussion. I agree with you on the simplification part. It is way too hard to keep up with these leftover amounts, and there needs to be a way to close those and consolidate in some kind of reserve account that would be for, these type of projects in the future that basically doesn't grow. It kind of stays. You have an amount to cover, cost overruns that you may have, but on various projects like that. But I think it does need to be. It is way too complicated.
We've got a lot of buckets in a lot of places, and so we definitely.
Of course, we have been fortunate in that there have been some opportunities for additional dollars, more than the norm. And as a result, I think that's created part of this over the last 3-4 years. But it really does need to be I think, worked on that, in that area. But I think the projects, particularly the combination of things in the public health renovation, spent a long time in that, and while I certainly, I mean, with cost overruns, basically with the Forsyth Agricultural Park for the $3 million, we had a lot of discussion about that, which is not a happy thing, but but we need to go ahead and get that project. It's just, I think it's going to get worse and it's going to get better. So I think we need to get moving on that. Any further discussion?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, I had, at our previous discussion, I'd had concern about location of the campground expansion at Tanglewood Park. Chris Weevil, our Parks and Recreation Director, very thoughtfully showed me the area at my request, and I agree that it's an appropriate location for expansion of the RV campground there. And it's basically, it's a unutilized grassy lawned area immediately adjacent to the existing RV parking places, and should have no adverse impact on other park uses.
It's good. All in favor, please hold up your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Kyle, the next one is yours, so turn back around. Agenda item 11 is an amendment to the fiscal year 24 budget to appropriate fund balance generated from sales taxes from the fire tax districts and the property taxes from the countywide overlay district for the purchase of a new truck. I think it's more of a cleanup item, but
It really is a cleanup item. This is appropriating fund balance that has, as Dudley said, generated from sales taxes from the fire tax districts and property taxes from the overlay district, totaling $259,680. For the purchase of a new truck to serve as a response vehicle to the volunteer fire departments. I believe it was approved by the board. The purchase of it was approved by the board maybe within the past month or two. Was one of the, maybe December of 23, the item was approved. And so this is really just the funding part of it.
Any questions for Kyle? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there a second? Yeah. Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? Any additional discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
all right. Agenda item 12 is an amendment to the 2016 Schools Capital Project Ordinance. Adam Fernbach with Finance is going to come up and review this one very quickly, but it's a pretty routine matter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is an appropriation of $1,355,000 out of the bond proceeds from the 2016 referendum to appropriate this money for the capital and maintenance projects in the 2016 school ordinance. These projects are various HVAC, roof, electrical systems upgrades at schools throughout the county. Darrell Walker has come here if there's additional questions about specifics, schools or otherwise on the nature of these projects.
Good. Any questions? Any questions for Darrell? I don't see Darrell back there. I do see Darrell back there. I will ask, Darrell, you don't even have to come up, but in looking at the list that was attached to this of the projects, it's hard to figure out what that, because the list went, I couldn't tell whether some of the budget items, they looked like some of the original 2016 budget items, and I didn't sense that they had some of those that were updated and completed. It was an odd list that was attached to this, and it didn't seem to relate to the current request, and I kind of got lost with it, looking at it. But I know what you're doing. Those lists of the general fix-ups.
Yeah, that list, there was an ask prior to this of about 4.3 million, and then this one of 1.355. That list you have equates to those both ask of the 4.3 and the 1.355.
Yeah.
So it wasn't separated. I can do that for you because.
Yeah, that'd be great. In fact,
Okay.
if you can email to Ashley.
I can do that.
Email it out just to clarify, because I got it.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Raise your hand, please. Any opposed? Do we have a motion?
Mr.
I
Chairman,
don't think we did a motion on that.
we need a
I'll be happy
motion.
to make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
The next three items are Mark Davidson, so Mark's going to come up and review item 13, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement between Forsyth County and the North Carolina Department of Transportation to fund the rehabilitation of Taxiway Alpha, and then he's got an item related to the engineering and planning work, and then the contract for rehab. So,
Good afternoon. If you're not familiar, Taxiway Alpha at Smith Reynolds Airport is in terrible condition, and the state NCDOT Division of Aviation has allocated funds for the project. The taxiway is about over a mile long and 60 feet wide, and the plan is to mill up 6 inches of the existing asphalt down to the concrete base, and then put down this, what they call P401 FAA-approved asphalt. It equates to about 23,800 tons of asphalt. It's a pretty big project, and so in order to move forward with the project, like Dudley just said, we got 3 resolutions I'd like you to pass. So the first one is that grant. Based on the contracts, the way it works with the state is we get the contract in, and then they allocate the funds at 90%. So we're looking at a grant in the amount of $7,427,700 with a local match of $425,300. In addition, the staff requests pre-approval for any future amendments to the grant that may be approved by the NCDOT and fall under the total amount of $412,650, which is about 5% of the project. So if there was an amendment to the grant, we would still only be responsible for 10%. The second resolution is to ensure the project goes well. We recommend execution of agreement with Avcon Engineers and Planners, which includes task order 2024-2. This agreement covers construction phase services, which is construction administration, construction management, full-time resident project representative, and quality assurance and testing of materials. Avcon designed the project and will provide construction phase services amount not to exceed $414,165. Since the NCDOT Division of Aviation is the ones allocating the large majority, 90%, they have performed what they call an independent fee estimate, and they verified that the proposed fee and found it reasonable. The third resolution is a agreement with Sharp Brothers. With the assistance from the City County Purchasing Department and Avcon Engineers, the Airport Department developed and advertised a public bid with a 2% MWBE goal established by the NCDOT. 2 bidders attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting, but after bidding and then rebidding, only 1 firm submitted a formal responsible bid. Sharp Brothers, a division of Vercelio and Grogan Incorporated, submitted a base bid of over $8.6 million with a 3.37 MWBE precipitation. Since the bid was higher than what the grant, we were working with the NCDOT, we worked with them, with Sharp Brothers, to value engineer the base bid, and we got them down to $7,767,142. And the way we did that is we changed some of the phasing. So what's going to happen, just real quick, June 2nd, we're planning to close down runway 1533 because we need to start work on Taxiway Alpha, all the connections to that runway. And so they're going to start on if this is all approved, on that Sunday at 4 o'clock. We'll have our longest runway closed until Friday morning. And then after that, that runway should remain open. But in order to proceed with the critical infrastructure funds, the staff recommends execution of a contract with Sharp Brothers with a base bid of what I just mentioned, $7,767,142, with ability to assign change orders in the amount of not to exceed $388,357. This project has been a long time coming, and our staff at the airport has done a great job keeping our existing Alpha open for crack sealing, and no one's more excited than the staff. And so this has been, like I said, I don't want to say 14 years, but it's been a long time coming, and the FAA did not step up with the funding we were hoping for, so the state did. And so the FAA's promised us that they're going to do their best to get us a project next year to replace all the lighting and the signage, which would be over a $4 million project. So any questions?
So the other runway was actually just rehabbed
No, that's the same runway we just rehab, 1533.
Okay.
But the taxiway, the parallel taxiway has all these stub outs
Yeah.
to connect. So we have to close down our primary runway because men and women equipment will be out there working. So we limited that to 4 days. But the project will last 66 days. And like I said, it's a massive project.
Thanks, Mark.
Any other questions about all this? There's been a lot of work, and it's been discussed 10 years I've been on this. We've been discussing this project off and on. So really glad to see it finally reach its conclusion. So my compliments to you and the staff.
Just a question,
Questions?
if I may. Sometimes you got to close things down in order to get the work done, but are there contingency plans in place for using the shorter runway during
The shorter
closure?
runway will be open the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah, they're actually, another element of the project, I didn't want to get in the weeds, but is removing, the FAA doesn't want a high-speed taxiway off of intersecting runways, and so a portion of the project is remove taxiway Juliet, and so there will be some temporary closure of both runways, but that'll be at night, and we'll work with North State Aviation to make sure they're aware.
That's good.
I believe you probably can. Yeah, I believe you can take 13, 14, and
13,
15.
14, and 15. Items 13, 14, and 15. We have a motion by Commissioner McDaniel to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Agenda item 16 is a resolution approving the renewal of Laserfish document management subscription services. MIS submitted this, and Joseph Sloop's here if you have any questions, but this is our routine agreement for Laserfish services to keep us going. It's in the amount of not to exceed $142,140.
We have a motion.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, please hold up your right hand, please. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, the next two items are Board of Elections matters, so Tim Suji's going to come up, I presume. I see him back there. Item 17 is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement with Capital Marketing Solutions, LLC, to provide ballot printing services for the May 14th, 2024 second primary. And then you've also got poll book printing services. Tim.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll start with the ballot printing contract. This is a contract amendment to include the printing of ballots for the May 14, 2024 second primary of the Republican nomination for North Carolina Lieutenant Governor and State Auditor. Under state law, a second-place candidate in the primary may request a second primary, and if no candidate receives more than 30% of the votes cast in that contest. The previous agreement was originally intended to include the November 7, 2023 municipal election and the March 5, 2024 primary election in a total amount not to exceed $48,533. The amended agreement will now also cover the second primary with the revised amount not to exceed $52,577.45. Before I move to the next contract amendment, I'll be glad to address any questions with this one.
We can actually just take them very quickly separately. Do we have a motion to approve item 17?
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner Bessie. Any further questions of Tim? Discussions? All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 18.
The next contract amendment is to include the printing of poll books for the May 14, 2024 second primary, again for the Republican nomination for North Carolina Lieutenant Governor and State Auditor. The previous agreement was originally intended for the November 7, 2023 municipal election and the March 5, 2024 primary election in a total amount not to exceed $46,319.32. The increase to the not to exceed total amount is not only to cover the cost for the second primary, but we had some additional printing for updated provisional application forms for this recent primary election. This was due to recent court orders affecting the eligibility of voters with prior felony convictions. And we also had some additional printing of authorization to vote, or ATV applications for the primary elections. This was due to having less voters casting early voting and absentee by mail ballots than what we had anticipated or estimated. So with less early voters and with less absentee voters, that caused an increase or the need for more applications to be printed due to the possibility that those voters might appear at their polling place on election day. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All righty. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Plyler.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion or questions? Tim?
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 19 is a resolution authorizing execution agreement for the agreement with Parkway Ford for automotive repair services. Kirby Robinson's back there if you've got any questions. It's pretty straightforward. It's an amendment to include an additional $30,000 for FY24 into that. And it's just for repair services.
Anybody want to ask any further questions before we have a motion?
Have approval.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut,
Second.
second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any other discussion? Favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Agenda item 20 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment to the agreement between Forsyth County and Frank L. Bloom Construction Company as the design builder for the Highland Avenue Park project. Chris Weevil is going to come up and brief this and also talk about an amendment to the Pandemic Response Special Revenue Fund, which is funding source. And we were going to finally kick this. He's going to show you a pretty picture of what this place looks like and how exciting this is going to be. And we are off and running.
Y'all are making me happy this month.
My glasses on, see what I'm doing. There we go. All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. The item I'm bringing before you today is an amendment to the pre-construction contract with Frank L. Bloom Construction Company for the guaranteed maximum price for the construction of Highland Avenue Park project. For a little background, on November 10th, 2022, the board adopted a resolution approving $1.6 million in ARPA funding for enhanced community programming and to add a park adjacent to 651 North Highland Avenue. Of the $1.6 million, $200,000 was indicated for the enhanced community programming portion, and $1.4 million was indicated for the addition of the park. After review, staff determined that the establishment of the enhanced community programming portion was not feasible. Staff further recommended utilizing the entire $1.6 million for the addition of the park. So on June 1st, 2023, the board approved a resolution for pre-construction services to Frank L. Bloom Construction Company for $145,340. Today's item will amend the pre-construction contract with Frank L. Bloom to include the guaranteed maximum price for construction. Staff worked with Frank L. Bloom to obtain a negotiated GMP of $1,516,544 for the base scope of construction that includes a design builder's fee of 3% or $43,831. The GMP exceeds the available construction budget of $1,412,160. As a result, an additional $105,000 is being requested from the Pandemic Response Special Revenue Fund. The requested amount is available and will fully fund the project. This resolution will also authorize the county manager to sign change orders in the amount not to exceed $42,500. The next slide in front of you is just a high-level overview of the project budgets and project cost. You can see the $1.6 million pre-construction fee, the 3% contingency and testing, leaving us with a construction budget of $1,412,160. The guaranteed maximum price of $1,516,545,000, leaving you with a $105,000 difference for the Pandemic Response Fund, Special Response Fund, and a total project budget of $1.705 million. 27% of the work is slated to be completed by MWBE firms. The work should begin sometime after approval, sometime in the summer of 2024. Completion is scheduled for 200 days or 6.5 months after the notice to proceed is given, so that should put us somewhere around January, February of 2025. Just to show you, the park site here circled in yellow is roughly 1.5 acres in size, bordered to the west by Highland Avenue, bordered to the south by 5th Street. On the northern side is the 651 North Highland Avenue, or Annex Number 2 building. The next slide is just a shot of the site plan. It's kind of hard to read, but it is the site plan for the park. What we've got, if you can see the cursor, we'll have a 500 square foot restroom building. In front of that will be a roughly 500 square foot a shell or picnic shelter size. We call it a band shell. That's just kind of what we're calling it. It'll have picnic tables underneath. On this side, there will be access for like food trucks, for any events that may be held there. We'll have open space seating in front that's accessible. We'll also have standard grass seating kind of in front in the larger area. There'll be picnic tables, as I mentioned, under the shell that can be moved in and out if there are events. They'll stay under there, for daily type use. There will also be an outdoor grill for folks to use. There is, to the south of the project, there is a half-court basketball court included. Right beside that is a full-size pickleball court that's divided by about a 4-foot high chain link fence. To the west of that is an open play space, grassed open play space areas, folks to kick soccer ball, throw football. So it's a nice open area there. As you can see, there's a lot of sidewalk on the site. There's about 1,400 linear feet of 6-foot wide sidewalk. It's a little bit wider here as you come off of Highland Avenue. That's to accommodate food trucks, anything like that that may be utilizing the particular shelter. Let's see, there will be benches located along these. You see one there. There's benches located along the sidewalks at several different locations. On the north end of the project, you'll see a couple of these areas highlighted in green. Those are where our play features are going to go. We have an accessible, all-inclusive swing. That's one of the neatest swings that we've got that I've seen on the market today. It is a swing where a person in a wheelchair can actually access the swing and never have to leave their chair. They can lock themselves in and they can actually swing, like a normal swing. Just to the east of that is an accessible, all-inclusive merry-go-round. This is basically a merry-go-round like I used to play on years and years ago, but it's actually sunken into the ground. It's the same level as the surface you'll be standing on. And again, someone in a wheelchair could actually access that without having to climb up or do anything. They can roll right onto it, and then other users can use it as well. A little farther east of that is what's a sensory climbing dome. It is just a dome, play apparatus that kids, adults can climb, play on. Those two areas in green are actually, the surfacing is synthetic grass playground turf. The merry-go-round, and then just to the north of the merry-go-round is an actual standard swing with a belt swing, and then it'll have a child swing as well. Those two locations will have poured in place rubberized surface and safety surfacing. The green area you see here to the far east, that was actually something that we value engineered out. It will be graded and left in place for if we want to do something in the future to put play features there, but just wanted to point that out. Parking will be accessible at the Annex Number 2 building. There's a sidewalk that will come in between the site there, the Annex 2 building and the parking lot, so you'll be able to access the site there. You will be able to access the site as well from 2 locations on Highland Avenue, and then you'll also be able to access here on the south side at 5th Street. Can't really see, but on the west side here along Highland Avenue, there's some large trees. Those large trees will remain, so that'll be a nice shaded area for the park. So thought that was a good feature that we're actually leaving those in place. So we'll give you the last couple pictures here. One is a rendering on the left. That's of the restroom building. That'll be a stick-built building. And the right is basically a picture of what the band shell will look like. They're basically in the same orientation they'll be on the site. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Again, the restroom building to the left, and then the band shells to the right. Those 2 buildings will be basically back to back with each other. The restroom building will be facing south, the band shell will be facing to the north. There'll be a little wall in between those. And that's basically what I've got for you today. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Just a clarification, and Kyle, I appreciate you mentioning it. He sent me a text. The extra dollars are actually appropriated interest revenue from the Pandemic Special Revenue Fund. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, I got just two questions. Could you go back to, well, first of all, yeah, go back to the slide before this. I know in the early discussions of this park, there was some discussion of like one of these kind of soccer kind of program areas, kind of on a fenced in, but it's a soccer area. And I thought it was some group that sort of specialized in that. Is it, I take it that idea was abandoned. I assume it'll fit in that size of that, of the kind of the largest space.
Correct, yeah, we did value engineer the additional courts and things that we had on that open grass area there that you see to the west of the two courts. We kind of value engineered those out. We're going to do the grading, and then we'll have the area grassed over, so if in the future we want to put any of those types of things in, we could definitely do that. So that will be covered in the scope, or base scope of the project.
And can you go back one more slide for the second item? So the trees that are going to, the trees you're talking about keeping are those right there that you're highlighting?
Yep.
And then I take it the remaining trees are gone.
The tree in the middle here is an old Bradford pear, so that one would come out. The shelter would come out. These trees you see kind of to the east of the project, they're not on our property. And then these trees down here are street trees that are in between the curb and the sidewalk, so those will be left alone as well.
So the big trees there on the other side, you say are not on the property?
Yeah, on the east side right here, they're on the.
Okay, they're going to stay. And what about the big tree?
Big tree there in the middle?
Yeah, it's gone. So you're really only taking the one big tree out?
One big tree, and there is an existing little picnic shelter there, that will go. That will be gone.
Right.
I'm sorry, did you say that the big tree in the middle that's going to go is a Bradford pear?
I believe it is.
Okay, well, that's
considered
a.
For that. That's right.
And add.
Any other questions? Chris? All right, do we have a motion?
You know what, I do have a question now that Commissioner Bessie mentioned the tree. Is the tree salvageable someplace else? It's not. Once we pull it up, it's just done.
Yeah, and to Commissioner Bessie's point, these are considered invasive. The Bradford pears are considered invasive trees, and some communities are actually paying bounties to have these cut down. So
they're what?
They're paying bounties, dollars, dollar for dollar, or replace different tree to replace one like that to take out. So
bounty to get rid of.
Bounty to get rid of.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They're also particularly vulnerable to splitting in a windstorm. So they're the trees that tend to go down first in any good shear wind.
I learn something every day. Thank you. Okay.
They're all so pretty.
All righty, are we ready for a motion?
Yes. Move to approve, Chairman.
I have a motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Agenda item 21 is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement with Daymark Recovery Services Incorporated. Denise Price is going to come up and talk about this one.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this item is to add dollars to the Daymark contract to pay for security. The addition of security does allow for a higher acuity patient to be seen there, and it will be funded through the $12.5 million that was given to us for crisis services. So no taken from MOE dollars for this. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Denise? Have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? In favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thanks, Denise.
Agenda item 22 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of air purifying respirators from W.W. Granger Incorporated for the Forsyth County Departments of Public Health and the Emergency Services Department. Adam Pendlebury's here. The cost of the purchase really basically funds $158,417 for these masks. and it is an allowable cost. I don't know if Adam's got any additional, or if you have questions about the mask. But.
Any questions you'd like to ask? Good. We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel. Have a second. Commissioner Wizenhut, Vice Chair Wizenhut, second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Got one property matter. Kirby Robinson is going to come up and review a resolution declaring certain county-owned buildings located at 400 West Haynes Mill Road surplus and authorizing their demolition. Kirby.
Right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this item before you today. As quick background, and as the board knows, the SciWorks property is located at 400 West Haynes Mill Road. It's a large property. It's roughly 28 acres in size. The main facility there is almost 70,000 square feet. It obviously has access to all public utilities. The property itself is 2 lots. They are both encumbered by the Land Water Conservation Fund easement. The combined tax value is roughly $9 million. $3 million of that's wrapped up in the land value. So when we go to move that LWCF easement, that's what the National Park Service is going to be looking for us to relocate. It's zoned institutional public, and its assumed highest and best use is industrial. I mean, it's very close to Highway 52, and if you look at the properties around it, an industrial use just sort of makes sense right there. In terms of current status, what's going on at the property now, Caladium has obviously moved out. As of April 1st, the property is maintained by the county. We have worked since that time in general services to limit our investment in the property. We've scaled back the use of utilities. We're basically maintaining the life safety systems there and providing grounds and maintenance services. I'll just note that we did anticipate some fiscal 25 ownership costs and included those in our budget request for next year. So as we took back the property, we spent some time learning about the property. And to do that, we did kind of a light condition assessment and really came away with 3 different observations. One is the age of the facilities. You know, the original buildings, I believe, were constructed in the early 20s. And over the years, they've been added on to, partially demolished and renovated. As best I can tell, the most recent large projects occurred in the 80s and the early 90s. We noticed a lot of deferred capital maintenance in the facility. We estimate it's roughly $4 million in capital repairs to restore the main facility to full functionality. And that's as it's designed right now. It's not changing any sort of interior finishes or layout, just to restore the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing functionality of the building. A couple of replacements that it needs is a roof, mechanical system, fire alarm, and water heater. And then from a real estate perspective, you sort of look at the property and you wonder if what our potential ability is, or a buyer's potential ability is to reuse the facility. And I would say that's somewhat uncertain right now. I'm not sure we know if the market would see that facility as a positive or a negative. In looking at it, there is some functional obsolescence in the facility, and I think that complicates the reusability of it. And by that, I mean that the facility has multiple different elevations within it. It steps down to about 5 different levels, and that's just really a function of how it's been developed over the years. So it's not one flat level that a developer could step in and use right now. It is a user-specific layout. It works well as a museum. It obviously would have to be changed and updated for an industrial or commercial use. It's sort of a sloping one-level design. You know, when you come in the front, you've got a high ceiling. As you go back towards the snakes that I stay away from, it's shorter ceilings. And then it's kind of a building within a building. You have some of the original 1920s buildings that are still kind of there, and they're inside the existing facility. So here are a couple pictures of what the property looks like today. In the upper left-hand corner, that's the main entrance to the SciWorks facility. And I'll note that we're calling it SciWorks just to distinguish it in our minds from Caladium. The planetarium in that picture is to the left, the pendulum area is to the right, and most of the outdoor exhibits and walking trails and barn and that type of thing are off to the right. Behind that main facility is the maintenance shop, and that is in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You can see the exterior of that facility is starting to deteriorate some. And there are a couple pictures on the bottom of just that deferred maintenance that we saw inside the facility. The bottom left picture is in the pendulum area, and if you look, you can see the paint starting to peel off. Basically, there's water intrusion that's coming through those windows right now. The second picture over is an example of the aging mechanical system that are leaking inside of the various rooms. And then the other two pictures are an example of sort of the water intrusion that we're seeing come through the roof. There is a sizable area of the roof that would need to be replaced. It's actually deteriorated so much that birds are eating part of it. I had no idea that birds like to eat parts of roofs, but apparently they do, and they're over at SciWorks. So some of those ceiling tiles have gotten wet and they've fallen through, and of course we're running air in the facility right now to ensure that if there is water intrusion, we're not causing mildew or mold. I found some interesting aerial pictures of the property, and they're sort of hard to see. But if you look back at 1972, this is what the property looked like. And as best I can tell, you have about 4 different rectangular structures that are out there. And then the maintenance, what is the maintenance shop now, is kind of here in the back. And there's some sort of square structure here in the middle. By 1987, they had closed in 2 of the original structures. And then in the mid-90s, it's sort of what it looks like now. You have kind of that 1987 piece that's still there. The facility has expanded. They've added the planetarium. You see sort of the paving work that's there. And of course, the maintenance shop is still there. So a couple of these structures, again, have been demolished over time. A couple of them have been enclosed within what is now the existing facility. So we sort of thought about it, what type of disposition strategy we wanted to bring you for your consideration. And we sort of started with the concept that the board may want to sell the property as is. So if you desire to sell the property as is, and by that I mean with the facility on it, we would sort of recommend a 2-phase disposition strategy. The first phase would be sort of testing the market. And by that I mean we could actively market the property as is, let's say for roughly a year. During that time, we would clean out the facility. We want to make it presentable. And we need to work with the museum to develop a surplus property disposal plan. There is a fair amount of just fascinating museum personal property that's still there. Wrapped up in exhibits and FF&E, that there could be some interest in the community with the school system or what have you. We'd love to work with them to facilitate some of that transfer. We would maintain the facility. We need to keep it dry and functional. But during that time, we could assess the facility's impact on the property's value and marketability. Does it help it or not? And then we would obviously work to relocate that LWCF restriction, which is going to be quite a project in and out of itself. You know, let's say the property over the course of a year did not sell. You can move into a phase 2 potentially and say, you know, if the facility is potentially negatively impacting a potential sale of the property, then we could procure a demolition contract for your consideration. We had a local contractor look at the building. They estimated $300,000 to $500,000 to bring it down. That's actually pretty in line with what the board approved at the CMEX property. When you compare the scope of that to the scope of this, it's similar pricing. And the variability in that range is really just around how much you want to clear the site and grade it. And then we would continue marketing the facility. You would just be marketing a different type of facility that would essentially be cleared and build ready. So we know, unless the board decides that to demolish the facility now, that there will be some holding costs or some costs of ownership sort of within that phase 1 approach. And then we sort of thought, well, what would that look like? And we proposed sort of 3 plans there. One is I'm just calling the minimal investment plan. And the idea there is that if we think the building has no value, but it also doesn't negatively impact the sale of a property, then we wouldn't want to maintain it at a very high level. So in other words, it has no value. A potential developer may come in and is probably going to tear it down. So we don't want to put a ton of money into it. Your annual cost next year would be roughly $36,000. And that's just some very basic utilities and keeping the building dry. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road option. It's kind of what I'm calling basic maintenance, where we think the building may have some value and could potentially be reused by a buyer. In that case, we would want to put in enough repairs, services, and utilities to keep it in usable condition. That's going to be about $135,000. And the reason is We do need to make some repairs to the MEP systems out there. We need to dry it in a little bit. And then you're going to run the utilities at a higher level because we got to maintain a minimal level of conditioning there. And then you have an active maintenance option, which is kind of on the outside of that, where we say the building has value, it can be reused as is, and it would help us sell the property. I'm not sure that would be the case, but then that would basically take your basic maintenance plan and add in capital repair and improvement. You can see that cost jump up significantly to $3.7 million. And that's where we're going in and actually replacing capital systems in the building. So in a quick summary, Callidium has moved out of the SciWorks facility. It's vacant, and the county is now responsible for the property. If the board desires to sell the property as is with the facility on it, we do recommend soliciting fair market value offers while evaluating the impact of the property, the impact of the facility on the property. Does it help it and help us sell it or not? During a phase 1 period, we would work to clean out the facility, make it presentable, help the museum dispose of the personal property that's in there. Look at marketing it for roughly a year. The basic maintenance option, kind of that middle of the road option, seems appropriate if that's the direction the board would want to go. That helps you maintain the property at an acceptable level, but avoids capital investment. If the property did not sell during sort of a phase 1, a year or so on the market, then we sort of relook at it and say, is that because it has the facility on it? I mean, what's the issue? If it is the facility and that appears to negatively impact a sale, we could bring back a demolition contract for your consideration. So there's a lot going on out there, and it is a little tricky. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
You ready for the questions?
I hope so.
What, the restriction that's on it, how long does that last? It's still under that restriction for a park.
That restriction's in perpetuity. It never goes away, and if the board did not want to use the property for public outdoor recreation, so we wanted to change the use to, let's say, industrial or commercial and sell it to a private owner, we would have to relocate that restriction to a different piece of property in the county that would be used for that purpose.
But before you leave that question, because I had the same thing, do you have to sell it before you ask to remove the restriction, or can you be looking to get the restriction removed before you sell it?
So the answer to that is unclear. It depends on who at the National Park Service you talk to. But the good news is that we have some experience with this because we just did it with the right-of-way property. What the National Park Service prefers is that you find a target piece of replacement property and you bring it to them to make sure it complies with what they want you to do with it. Once you do that, then you can bring on a buyer for your property, and then you sort of do it as a package deal. That's the preferable way. It doesn't have to be like that. There is a time span. Let's say you came in and you sold the property. As I understand it, with some approval, there is a several-year period where you can then be looking to relocate that restriction. So if we had a buyer now, you could theoretically, I think, go under contract with them and then work with the National Park Service to develop a plan. The problem is you are committing to doing that within a certain time span.
But during this year, this year, phase 1 year, we could go ahead and try to identify location, whatever, and to start this process with them while we're doing this phase 1.
I think we would be smart to do it in conjunction. Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Linville.
Well, they're not going to, the Park Service, they're not going to totally turn loose that restriction until they're satisfied that the county's got something else lined up to replace it, if it suits them.
Yes, sir. I think that is the technically correct answer, and they have all of the power within that. Yes, sir. So that is the way we should, or they want us to do it, is to find the replacement property before we commit to selling this one. Because theoretically, it has that deed restriction on it now, so a buyer isn't going to want to buy a restricted piece of property.
Well, just for conversation, if there was no, if it was not restricted, then you can find out the value by other properties in the area. Just the tax collector can do that, or have someone to do it. And maybe you can help him, maybe you can put the number on it. But it's got a number to us, just assume that restriction wouldn't matter, so would have something to work from to see what that value would be. They can take our surrounding properties and come up with that. In the meantime, I move that we do not declare it as surplus, but to, I'm not sure which one of your, is to look at the matter further to get some better idea of what we might want to do. Because are they going to, if the county decided to take those structures down, does that come under the restrictive covenants?
The National Park Service is interested in outdoor public recreation. So we could likely do what we want with the facility, but we have to understand that in December, we're going to need to recertify to the federal government that this is a public park. So we have some time to sort of work on a plan with them. Otherwise, we could be in a position of having to sort of look at the use of the walking trails that are out there. But I think the facility falls outside of that restriction from my conversations with them.
Is it currently open to the public now?
No, sir, it's not.
How is it a public park then?
Well, we're trying to figure out what to do with it now. We, again, I think have some leeway with them since our tenants moved out. We've got some leeway until December to sort of figure that out.
We surely don't want to get in conflict with the Park Service for it being under restriction, and we don't have it open to the public. We're saying we're doing what they say that's supposed to be, and we're not.
Well, we're sort of at the first step of that process, and that's looking at a vacant facility that has some issues that we want to make sure we handle the correct and cost-effective way. And I think you're right. Part of that discussion needs to be, how does this other 28 acres, affect that? But right now, you're right. I was probably more focused on the use or reusability and cost impact of the facility. But you're correct that there is a requirement that the property be used as a park. Hopefully, over the next 8 months or so, we can sort of figure that out.
Well, I would just move to go to your minimal plan, and you begin your work and see whether it's actually going to take more than that or not for the time that it may take to go through this. And then, if we had to go to 135, I might consider that, but the bigger number, that's why we need a number if we're out of the restriction. And then you got time to look around to see what would be other possibilities. Thing is, the county's never going to get out from under restriction of some property.
That's right. And your number is $3 to $4 million. We sort of know what that is, the range. We will have to establish that, what's called a yellow book appraisal, when we get to the time. But we had it privately appraised in 2016. The land value was roughly $4 million. So on the tax rolls right now for about $3 million. They're focused on land value. So that's the amount of the restriction that would need to be relocated somewhere. That's going to be quite a task to find that type of land. If we do the minimal investment, I'll just quickly note that we were very focused on the facility in this. So I apologize, I didn't look at the broader use of the property in that. It will be difficult to bring the facility back. And so if we do minimal investment, we're going to drain the domestic water from it, and that'll allow us to turn the heat off during the winter, right? There's not going to be a lot of air moving through the facility. And the reason is because that has the cost impact of the utilities. And any of those capital MEP systems could fail at any time, and then we'll be in a position of having to replace it. So we were basically going to turn it off under the minimal investment. And that's sort of saying that the facility probably has no reusability in the future.
Okay.
Does your motion include putting it on the market?
Well, if you want to do that, that's okay with me, just to see what's going to happen, because you're going to have to lay it all out there. If you do get somebody interested, it's going to take some period of time to do what we have to do. But yeah, if you want to do that and just see what's out there.
I'll second your motion.
So right now, I can't walk around the trails.
If you walk around a locked gate, you can. But yes, sir, yeah, we got the parking lot shut off. But you're right, there is not, it's not set up right now for public access.
Well, do you still have the key to the lock to the gate?
Yes, sir, I can get it.
Well, I'd like to go over there.
Yes, sir.
Well, we have a motion by Commissioner Linville to basically postpone yet advertise, and we have a second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. I have a question for our attorney. Do we not need to declare it surplus to even put it on the market?
It's real property, so no. The declaration of surplus statute relates to personal property. So you don't need to take any action, but you certainly could have a motion. As I understand it, Commissioner Linville moved that there be minimal investment in upkeep of the building and that it be placed on the market, offered for sale.
Then another question on the kind of furniture and equipment that's left, what's left in the building. How soon do you think that can be disposed of? Like to either gift, whatever, so forth, because that has a little bit to do with if it's months worth of work, there probably needs to be some conditioning. You don't go back to your minimal setback, and if you've got something in there that gets damaged, because I know there's been water problems in that building for a while.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, Colliding was waiting just to get to the new place and not make any investments in that, and everybody understood that. So what's your assessment of cleaning it out, getting it cleaned out?
I think the key to me is recognizing that the museum owns the personal property in the facility. We don't, so even though the county's leasing, we were leasing the facility, the lease is now ended. We are owning or maintaining the facility. It's still their stuff inside. So I mean, I'd have to work with the attorney to make sure I'm not doing something illegal. But we would encourage them to facilitate a sale or donation or to the school system, whatever they wanted to do of their property, personal property in the building.
I think they've kind of gotten rid of all the museum. I think they've done their surplus sale, transfer to other museums, all the things that were museum worthy.
Right.
And there were a number of, lots of stuff that they went through, huge collections of different rocks and insects and you name it. They had the works that had collected over time. So they did that. So I don't think there's any of that kind of stuff in it. I'm sure there's some furniture, but that'd be, I think, a single phone call would answer. I'd say they'd be just real happy to give it to us to get rid of it. But the question is, should we make them get rid of it? I guess is another part of it.
If they give it to us, then we're going to need to go through the statutory process of disposing personal property.
Right.
Then we're really in more of kind of the model that we used maybe in the Central Library, which was essentially a public yard sale.
Yep.
Let me just interject, because I actually met Elizabeth yesterday, and we talked about this, and I expressed our disappointment that they left it in a mess, and challenged her to go back and look at what is in there and get it cleaned out, and as part of that process, to leave us with a broom swept, facility. And she said to me yesterday she was absolutely committed to that. And so y'all need to get together. Hopefully she will talk to you now. That's what she said. And I think we need to hold them to that and give them a time frame to do that, like
Absolutely.
the next 4 weeks or something. And so
that would certainly be advantageous to us. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Manager, that with the shots you took, I don't know whether you took the worst ones or not, but nevertheless, it showed me the picture of what was going on. It's been it appears, I won't say that it has been, but it appears to me that it's been neglected. And if we got any other places that's under our authority and needs something done to it like that, I'd like to know what they are. That's just not good.
Yeah, and she acknowledged that she realized that they, in the efforts to try to get into their new facility, hadn't gone back there to do that yet, and their time sort of ran out. And I suggested that she and Kirby get back together and her make that right. And she accepted the responsibility and said she would.
Good.
Chairman, if I may.
And then I think that makes Commissioner Linville's motion good. I think we're ready. Any other questions? We're ready to vote.
I do have a question relative to the interest. Thank you for sharing the market value, but has there been any interest in that facility?
Not really, but I also haven't actively sort of put it out there. I wanted to make sure the board, wanted to sell it and how you wanted me to go about that. So yes, ma'am, we haven't really put that out as a listing yet.
All right. And as far as the motion is concerned, Chairman, I'm not quite sure if I'm on board with the minimal investment. I think that maybe we should delay that or consider another plan with the information that's been shared today with Dudley and the communication with Claudium, if that makes sense.
It does, yes, ma'am. I think most of that's going to be around the personal property in the facility. And so what I'm actually doing in these plans is trying to predict the amount of money I'll spend next year to maintain and operate it. I do have a certain amount of that number already programmed into our budget request that, and we added about $40,000 to that just in equipment repair, roof repair, just to keep it dry and at an acceptable level. So if, let's say you have a buyer come in that says, man, I really like that facility, we can turn it right back on. So that's kind of what basic maintenance does. If you do the minimal investment, it's less on general services, but it will continue to deteriorate.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen.
If you already put that in next year's budget, what is the $36,000 you have on this list? Is that what's in next year's budget?
So if I would actually, if you went minimal investment, I'm going to pull about $50,000 out of my budget request for next year because that 135 is more than I put in there. $36,000 was less. I was kind of right in the middle of just utilities, really, and a little bit of equipment repair. Because when we were doing our budget request in February, so I didn't know as much about the facility.
Well, is the 36 too low?
It depends on what you want to do with the building. If we think the building cannot be reused and we're okay sort of letting it go, 36 is going to be probably fine to get by with that.
Well, what were you going to do to keep it dry? Because you're not going to put a new roof on it. That's big bucks. So you think you could patch some areas?
We're going to try. A lot of the repairs that have been done to the roof have not been commercial grade repairs.
Yes.
And we're going to go out there and use our resources to try and patch it and fix it the best way we can. I'm not saying there won't be a tarp or two up there on parts for a little bit, but we're going to try our best to sort of fix it as best we can.
Okay. So back to Commissioner McDaniel's point. So are we clear on what the motion is? It
would be to restate it, please.
All right.
If we're going with the minimal investment, so that I'm sure that's where.
So basically, we're going to pursue possible buyers, and we're basically slowing down to a bare maintenance level and continue to investigate.
When you say bare maintenance, are you minimum or basic?
Minimum.
Minimum, okay.
If we did the minimum, we're still going to do our best to keep it dry and safe. We're going to monitor the fire alarm. We're going to try and keep the rain out of it. But we're also going to drain the water so you won't be running heat in the winter, sort of what that means. You don't have sprinklers busting or something like that. We'll do our best to keep it still a decent building at a minimum level.
Okay. Everybody ready to vote? Nope. Got another question.
Question specifically about the planetarium facility there. Is there any planetarium equipment left there?
There's some sort of projector-looking thing that I think went there, but beyond that, I'm not sure. I'd have to look, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the projector would be the key.
It's a Zeiss projector. It cost about probably a couple $100,000 back 30 years ago. I mean, they were big time expensive.
Yeah.
I was involved with one in Salisbury. It's exactly the same style.
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
but it doesn't work. It's in bad shape. It's in really bad shape. All the motors and turning, it won't do all that. So that because they basically had abandoned it and started using a projection, just you could show things up on the screen. You could do one view of the planetarium. I mean, really no planetarium shows other than things that you could project on with a commercial slideshow kind of thing.
It has been a long time since I've actually been in that planetarium, and I didn't remember what level.
As you can imagine, that's all going digital now. The new planetarium in Callidium is a digital planetarium, and it's like magic kind of stuff. But those old projectors are gone. I mean, I bet they could be 50 years old. They're old. I bet the Smithsonian might want to put it somewhere.
Presumably, there's nothing about the dome itself internally that's worth salvaging.
Nope.
I haven't spent a ton of time in there, sir. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure.
Take a look at it if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All in favor of Commissioner Linville's motion, please raise your hand.
No.
What is Commissioner Linville's motion exactly?
I think the short version of it simply is we want to investigate the possibility of selling the old Cyworks building. We're going to do minimal repairs to keep it dry and safe, and we'll investigate other avenues of what it takes to get the deed restrictions removed. We'll start investigating removal of the deed restrictions on that property. Those three things. So that's what the motion is.
You
And
might want to put the screen back up for the other commissioners to review.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our colleague, McDaniel, give us your thinking.
Yeah, my rationale again was I don't want the utilities to be turned off, the lights turned off. It's going to cost, I mean, we already know that $36,000 wasn't enough to sustain where we're trying to move. 135 was probably right where they need to be. I think Kirby advised that there's a little bit more cushion there in terms of maintaining the building. So I wanted to put at least the basic investment in terms of maintenance in the building versus the minimum.
Do you think there's a realistic possibility that sale of this facility?
Yes, that's why I asked about the interest, because again,
we're probably experiencing somewhat of a point of order here. In that we had a motion and we didn't have any discussions until we began to see there might be some opposition. So I think we ought to act on the very first motion, which was minimal, which was look for offers and begin to remove the deed restrictions. Those were the three things in Commissioner Linville's motion. I'll ask again, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
No.
Now, those opposed. Motion carries 6-1. Okay. All righty.
Thank you, Kirby. All right, the last two items you can take together, they're tax administration items, the resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor to collect an amount of $14,396.67 from the North Carolina Vehicle Tax System, and the amount of $3,081.33 for assessor refunds.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut. I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand.
All right, and that is it for the formal meeting.
Before we adjourn, I want to call on Vice Chair Wizenhut. She wanted to actually wanted to do this last week, make a comment particularly about our dental clinics.
Right. I just wanted to share with the other commissioners and the folks who are in the audience that last week, the county's preventive dental health program celebrated their 50th anniversary. And let me give you a little bit of history that over 50 years ago, a former county commissioner, James Ziegler, and former Board of Health member, Harry Spillman, who were both dentists, led an initiative to add prevention and education to our dental health program in 1974. And so that program has been a huge success and celebrated 50 years of helping our kids and our adults with their dental health. And I just wanted you all to know that. I wanted you to know it last week, but.
I got it. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're going to adjourn. Okay. What kind of break do we need to go into the other part? 5-minute break, okay. All right. Resume with our briefing for May 16th in 5 minutes. briefing for the May 2nd briefing for the Thursday, May 16th regular meeting, and we'll call that to order. And we do have one discussion item, which is a Federal Railroad Administration grant from Kyle Haney.
I think it's going to be me because Kyle is not in town. And so I've got that. And then I was also going to mention sort of the strategy for the morning session next Thursday. So there's the two things I had to mention. So on the Federal Railroad Administration grant, it really kind of bubbled up. I think Commissioner Wisenhunt had mentioned in some of the things she saw on the national level around this Federal Railroad Administration grant, and Commissioner Bessie got really interested in it. And so Kyle and I we met this week and talked about what the opportunity is. And I wish Commissioner Bessie was here because he really identified that there is a railroad trestle that crosses over Renolda Road the trestle is actually in bad shape. And my understanding is that trestle being deemed unsafe actually really is preventing the line that runs through that area, really all the way out Stratford, all the way out to Clemens. That part of the reason why that line is not being used has to do with the designation of that trestle. And so we're trying to validate that with Norfolk Southern as we speak. And so I had some Norfolk Southern contacts. I reached out to them. Kyle did the same. The grant deadline is like the end of May. It is very much geared towards really while local governments can be applicants, because we don't know anything about the condition of any of that, of Norfolk Southern's infrastructure. We really have got to do this with Norfolk Southern. And so we can certainly pursue it. My thoughts were we would try to pull in the MPO and some of the planners there, trying to get Norfolk Southern's, the question is, if it hasn't been repaired, it must not be valuable to Norfolk Southern from their revenue perspective because it's their asset. We've just got a lot of questions about it. Again, I wish Commissioner Bessie was here because he's the one who said, let's go ahead and try to apply. We dove into the CFR, the federal regulation piece that talks about it.
Do we have any area photos of that location?
I do. Actually, I can put that up on the screen.
I live on Renolda, so I'm I know that the city has done some work.
I mean, again, I'm not an expert in here around it, but that's the rail trestle that kind of is in question along Renolda Road, and that's where Northwest Boulevard and Renolda, you can see, kind of come together.
Yeah. Well, if they know that there's some money to be had, they might be interested.
Well,
if I'm not mistaken, then I could be, because I turned it all over to Commissioner Bessie because that's his.
He loves railroad.
Yeah,
in fact, he was on
I know.
train on the way to Raleigh this week when I called him about it.
Yeah.
So.
But I think it's nationwide, but it's like $62 billion.
Yeah.
So.
And clearly this Norfolk Southern knows about the federal opportunities to apply for it. I'm sure they are trying to make decisions within their system around here.
There
he is, yay. I'm talking to him a little bit about what we've learned so far around this federal grant around the rail opportunities, and really Kyle and I had met. We talked about sort of strategies around this and whether or not we could pull somebody in from the MPO, and then both of us have reached out to our folks we know at Norfolk Southern to try to find out how to get this in. What I think I would suggest is if we could certainly prepare an agenda item to encourage Norfolk Southern to pursue this and to work, to see if there is a partnership to try to understand how that how activating, fixing that rail trestle will impact the possibility for rail service really up Stratford and all the way to Clemens. I mean, I guess the only one of my involvement that I've had with really the community, and it's been 4 or 5 years ago, but some of the neighbors along the rail line, farther down from Idols, that apparently Norfolk Southern did have some customers back through there. Some folks had bought some houses because housing's starting to come in there. They were not happy that the rail lines were loading trains, and I think they must have been doing that west from Davie coming in because they wouldn't have been able to access this. But so there's a little bit of, nobody told me their trains were on this train track. Well, the train track was there, and
I would think.
Yeah, you're not going to, because we do have complaints from around rail, particularly folks who live up New Walkertown Road. Those because the big car lot there is
big.
It's big. So anyway, neither of us have gotten confirmation back and really a good contact yet at Norfolk Southern, but we will certainly put as much energy in this as you want us to put into it. A resolution telling Norfolk Southern that we are interested in the improvements that would be needed to activate that line of track might be helpful.
One thing that I had thought was worth considering under the time pressure circumstances was an application that involves simply study of what the costs would be in order to reopen that inactive section. That would give us the opportunity to work with Norfolk Southern over a longer period of time in identifying the costs and benefits there. It's the kind of thing that had the NCDOT gotten the federal grant to study the Winston-Salem through Clemens to Charlotte passenger restoration link, they would have had to have been studying that grant. Now, they didn't get that one, although they did get the Winston-Salem to Raleigh passenger restoration. So they are in the process of studying the costs and benefits there. If we were to be fortunate and get some federal funding for the study of the Forsyth County to Charlotte link, we'd be getting a head start. I think probably the kind of oh gosh, y'all are really interested proof to improve the NCDOT's request to USDOT for the larger grant of studying the long section there. So I think it would be worth our while if we could put something together that would give us an opportunity to submit a planning and analysis grant. And thank you again to Vice Chair Whistnett for calling my attention back to this. I had noticed it earlier this year, but because the only projects that were being discussed in that context were the at-grade crossing safety improvements, I had thought that it was limited to that. When Kyle actually did the run-through of the details, we came tentatively to the conclusion that it's a broader applicability for this funding, and that something like the safety improvements and replacement of the trestle that would be necessary in order to open the line for use could qualify. So.
Sure. Commissioner Bessie, if I could, I do have a question relative to the city's involvement, and will the city be applying for the same grants?
I have not gotten any indication that that is the case. If we learned that that were going on, we'd certainly want to coordinate
I would
that.
like to just know, but this
Yeah.
is great, so
Yeah.
thank you.
But yes, my working assumption would be that if we conclude that it's a possibility to move forward with an application, we would want to, as a part of that, reach out to the MPO, to Winston-Salem, and to NCDOT for support in that.
Sounds fair. Thank you.
And I would think from our standpoint, from a resolution, it should be in support of the grant, and so that we're not wasting 2 weeks in terms of just investigating the potential. I think a study grant application would probably be, I'd say the most important part is that clearly Norfolk Southern needs to have touch base with and say, do you mind if we do this, and will you work with, because they have to work with us afterwards. Are you willing to work with us if we received a grant to investigate this possibility? And if they said yes, it's not so time sensitive for Norfolk Southern, because all they got to do is say, well, yeah, if you get it, we'll be glad to work with you. Yeah. And then I bet you that grant application would be pretty straightforward, other than Norfolk Southern, unless they also said, we will never want to do this. They could say that, and then say they could provide the bullet points of here's the 3 reasons why we would like to see it.
It would be great if we got a timely yes to that with the bullet points. My previous experience dealing with Norfolk Southern is slow would be a very kind term. They have a complex internal bureaucracy that is not used to the concept of rapid response to new things, to changes.
I think we just explore it. If in 2 weeks, if we think we're going to have something worthy of a resolution, we can do it.
Okay, so we will pursue it. I mean, you could approve we'll have a deadline to get a grant application in. We could go ahead and submit it, and then the board could come back and say, okay, after the fact. It is, we stepped through the Code of Federal Regulations on what they ask. They are very clear about how they're going to rank the projects and what the criteria are. And so, you read all that and you become, I don't want anybody thinking that we're going to be successful. If we might, but when I read it, I thought, it feels like a wild, just a crazy, almost impossible thing to do. But we've been surprised before, and we can certainly invest that. So it sounds like to me, we need to pursue over the next couple of weeks, understanding will Norfolk Southern say yes, we're interested in, and help us learn that. We'll simultaneously work on what some generic language looks like for a planning grant, and then as we approach the deadline, assess whether or not it makes sense to submit it.
Yeah, and I would go more than generic language. Frankly, I would say that if we want something submitted in time, with the recognition that actually getting it's probably a long shot, but there's value in the submission. My default assumption would be that you wouldn't get a yes or no answer from Norfolk Southern within the necessary time frame.
I think you're right.
And so they could come back in 2 months and say, well, we don't have any objection if you get a study grant, but that's not saying that we'll ever check off on it. And then they might come back in 2 years and say, hey, that's a great idea, because we can use the extra track.
Well, in 2 years, there might be another grant opportunity.
Of course. Of course.
For sure, yeah. Okay, so we got some marching orders. We'll keep plowing.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then the other item I had just was morning session next Thursday. Met with board leadership to talk a little bit about it. And so what we have is Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and actually I think this is the order that it sounded like it made sense to do it in, but Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, they're going to be presenting the Board of Education's budget to this board as required by the North Carolina General Statutes. So take time to do that. We have an update from the City County Utility Commissions. There is a lot going on with a lot of different projects and just policy matters around City County Utility Commission. So we'll do that, some of which we'll get into future water and sewer services, which would be a good lead into our planning update. And so Chris Murphy's going to do that, and in talking with him, that's going to be mostly focused on the comprehensive plan work that they're doing right now and how all that fits in. So we'll have a really robust discussion of that. And then Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. would be last, and if we run out of time, they could come in, perhaps come in at 2 before the meeting. We can kind of play that one by ear. I think we were going to postpone the presentation from Partners.
Partners.
Yeah. So we would do that. So anyway, that's what the morning session looks like. Any questions or concerns about that?
I have one comment before when you get to it, jump into it. I did get a call from Alex Nelson of the Veterans Cup thing. He's got our new trophy, has 2 plaques on it now, and he would like to come and present it. And I told him to save time, that we might just add that before we get into the special resolutions. He could just come and give the trophy, and it would take 3 minutes, and then he doesn't have to wait for anything. It'd be right after we call to order. We'd jump and have our prayer.
The morning session or the 2 o'clock session?
2 o'clock. I was at the regular meeting on the 16th. Okay. So it would be on the agenda for the 16th, actually on the agenda, Veterans Cup presentation.
All right.
And do it first thing so he's in and out.
Okay. All right. And so the only other item is just a quick review of what we're teeing up for the May 16th meeting, and we'll add that one that you just talked about. So I'll do this really quickly. We do need to do the detailed review just on 2 of John Burgess's items. There you go, John, because he is actually going to be out next week. So I said, come on in and you can do that. Why don't you come on up and review those items, John? And those are items 13 and 14 on the agenda. 13 is a resolution authorizing the execution of contract between Forsyth County and Martin T. Bardell. And then actually there's 2 of them that are related to that. So.
Yes. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I appreciate being able to brief these today. These are 2 unique contracts, but they are related to one another. Both of these contracts, amendments, or what they are, involve property tax foreclosure program, and they both are with the same vendor. One of the hardest things we have to predict in tax administration as far as budgetarily funds are concerned is really the foreclosure project, because it depends on when people pay off their properties or sell their property, and so it's hard to predict how that goes throughout the year. Also, I wanted to remind you that remember that depending on the cost for foreclosure program, a lot of the costs are offset by revenues, because we're able to bill those items back to the property itself or to the property owner. So a lot of these dollars are actually recoverable by revenue. Effectively, your approval of these 2 items shifts $85,000 from one contract to another. That would make the NREM contract not to exceed $115,000 and the mortgage contract not to exceed $440,000 in the current fiscal year. There's no new money here, it's just shifting from one to the other. These amendments do not change the not to exceed amounts for the upcoming fiscal year at all. It's just to get us to the end of this fiscal year.
Any questions for John?
Thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you.
Great. All right, very good. So the rest of the agenda that, again, we're working on, trying to get finalized right now. You've got 2 special resolutions, one with Emergency Medical Services Week in Forsyth County. This is May 19th through May 25th. And then there's a resolution authorizing hiring and retention bonuses for full-time paramedic employees assigned to the Emergency Services Department. That is a job classification. We just have not had success in recruiting at all. And that is our highest level certified person that's on a truck. That market is very, very difficult, and really we're just trying to rely on, we have had some success with that program with the detention officers, and so it kind of mirrors that, just a short-term kind of a program again, it's not for everybody who works in EMS, it's for paramedic level, that highest level position. So we are going to brief that in detail, and Chief Hunley and Shannon will review that. We've got a budget and finance matter, transferring some funds from inflation contingency to the Public Safety Center renovation project. So we're bring that one to you. We've got just some routine type items like the Oracle Cloud subscription services renewal that is coming due. An amendment to an agreement with Double D Construction Services for demolition services. That's going to help us get the Liberty Street parking area that we did the demo on, to kind of get that in final form so we can start using that, and the schools are part of that. Guaranteed maximum price for the Tanglewood Maintenance Building Solar Project. That was one that you just approved that we were already ready to roll on, so we can bring that to you. Items 8 and 9 are both vaccine and influenza vaccines using state contract pricing, so we can get that purchased. Item 10 is a resolution approving the execution agreement with SG Atkins to help. They basically are part of our help in developing and supporting that microenterprise individual development account program that Community and Economic Development runs. Item 11 is an execution of agreement between Forsyth County and Forsyth Technical Community College for their apprenticeship program. They had lost some grant funds. This sort of backfills that using some economic development dollars that y'all had set aside for a short period of time, and we're also trying to get some state money for that as well, and you'll hear about that. An agreement with FMRT Group for pre- and post-hire psychological and medical services. Sheriff's Department's having some good success in recruiting and hiring, so we're having to revisit those agreements that already exist. 13 and 14, John just talked about. You've got a few vehicles that we're talking about purchasing in items 15, 16, and 17. And then janitorial services, 2 janitorial contracts for services at county facilities. Kirby's going to talk to you about some issues we had around service level. We rebid it, and we're going to bring you some changes to that. And then one of the ARPA agreements is out at Horizons Residential Care Facility. Their plans for the construction that y'all had approved. Actually, they need their leasehold to be modified a bit, and so Kirby will review that as well. And then there's also a lease agreement between Forsyth County and AeroX, where they're putting some of the radar devices, and one of those would go on that Union Cross Road at that radar tower actually that's there at Union Cross Park. And so it's a pretty straightforward agenda. We got a little bit more work to do to get it wrapped up, but Thursday will be a pretty big day because the morning session is going to be pretty packed. So that is it.
All righty. Stand adjourned.